Vater.
I want to thank you that we have the possibility now to open your word again.
Ich möchte dich danken, dass wir eine erneute Möglichkeit haben, dein Wort zu öffnen.
And again to thank you that we are now all in the class.
Und danke auch, dass wir jetzt alle hier wieder in der Klasse zusammen sind.
And I want to ask you that you will come and teach us, Father.
Und ich möchte bitten, dass du uns jetzt kommst und uns lehrst.
That you will please bless Brother Mark as he's leading out the class.
Bitte segne Bruder Mark, als die Klasse leitet.
Of course, the translation and the live stream.
Und bitte auch den Übersetzer und den Livestream.
And help us please to understand what will be said.
Und bitte hilft uns, das zu verstehen, was uns vermittelt wird.
In Jesus' name, amen.
In Jesu Namen. Amen.
Now, I know that we went through this topic last week.
Und ich weiß, dass wir diesem Thema letzte Woche hindurchgegangen sind.
These notes have been updated.
Also diese Notizen, die sind schon updated worden, also so auf den neuesten Stand gebracht.
Now, I wasn't sure how much the others was aware of these things, so I'm just going to go over them as much as necessary.
Also ich war mir nicht sicher, inwiefern die anderen diese Dinge bewusst waren. Also ich werde nochmal da drüber gehen, so weit wie es nötig ist.
Okay. So, maybe you just want to update that document and stick it in there. Now, we're not going to read through every one of these quotes. I'm just taking points out of it. We're familiar with most of them.
Also wir werden nicht jeder einzelne von diesen Zitaten lesen, wir werden nur einiges daraus greifen. Die meisten von uns sind diesen Zitaten vertraut
Okay, so what I want us to look at is that here we have the Millerite line from 1798 to 1844.
Was ich möchte, dass wir sehen, ist, hier oben haben wir die Milleritenlinie von 1798 bis 1844.
And we know that this is 46 years.
Und wir wissen, dass das eine Spanne von 46 Jahren ist.
Right? 7 thunders, 3 angels' messages.
Die 7 Donnern, die 3 Engelsbotschaften.
And what I want you to also pay attention to is that the beginning is marked by a birth and the end is marked by a birth.
Und was wir auch aufmerksam sein sollen, ist, dass der Anfang ist mit einer Geburt markiert, aber auch das Ende.
Right?
Amen.
Because if you bring all the lines here, you get the birth of Moses, birth of Christ, this is the birth of a nation.
Denn wenn wir alle Linien zusammenbringen, wir haben hier der Geburt Jesu, der Geburt Mose, das hier ist das Geburt eines Nations.
Right? And then in the end of Moses' line at the Passover is the birth of a nation also.
Und am Ende von der Linie von Mose am Passafest, das ist der Geburt eines Nations, wenn sie aus Ägypten rauskommen.
Okay, and the cross is also marking a birth when you come out of the grave.
Und das Kreuz markiert auch eine Geburt, wenn du aus dem Grab herauskommst.
Okay. So the point is that you have this is the time of the end.
Also das hier, 1798, ist Zeit des Endes.
And you have a birth at the beginning and the end.
Und eine Geburt am Anfang und auch am Ende markiert.
And what I want you to understand is that this here is just a bigger version of this here, right? The binding off.
Was ich möchte, dass wir verstehen, ist, das hier oben ist nur eine größere Version dessen hier, also der Zeit des Bindens.
Okay, the first quote is from Second Selected Message 118.
Erste Zitat von 2 SM 118.
And this is the one that says, when Jesus began his public ministry, he cleansed the temple from its sacrilegious profanation, and among the last acts of his ministry was the second cleansing of the temple.
Und das hier ist der Zitat, der sagt, wenn Jesus seinen öffentlichen Dienst begann, der hat den Tempel gereinigt von seinem Abfall, und der letzte Akt oder eine der letzten Taten seines Dienstes war das Tempel das zweite Mal zu reinigen.
Where are you pointing to?
Sorry?
Where were you pointing to?
The beginning?
No, that's 1780, 44. That's not where Jesus began his public ministry. Okay, that's what I'm saying, where you put arrow pointed to it, I'm about to go to it now, so this is the binding off, right?
Also, okay, Christ's line is not on there, but I was just doing the beginning and the end, the birth and the birth you've got marked here.
Yes, that's on this line, but that's not the two temple cleansing. Okay. Okay. So when we understand that when you line up the binding off, you've got the two temple cleansings at the beginning and the end.
Und wenn du das Linie auf Linie bringst, wir wissen, dass wir die zwei Tempelreinigungen am Anfang und am Ende haben.
Which we know in this verse is she parallels to two distinct calls, right?
Und wir wissen in diesem Vers, dass Ellen White vergleicht das mit zwei bestimmten Ausrufen.
Revelation 18, 1-3 and Revelation 18, 4 and 5.
Offenbarung 18, 1-3 und der zweite Offenbarung 18, 4 und 5.
Okay? And we know that these two temple cleansings are a symbol of the birth, right?
Und wir wissen, dass diese zwei Tempelreinigungen ein Symbol des Geburts sind.
Okay? And in the next quote,
Der nächste Zitat.
it says, in the cleansing of the temple, Jesus was announcing his mission as the Messiah and entering upon his work. So this quote is speaking about the first temple cleansing in the time of Christ.
Also dieses Zitat spricht über die erste Tempelreinigung zur Zeit Christi.
Okay, and it tells us there in the next highlighted bit, it says, but by the incarnation, the Son of God, the purpose of heaven is fulfilled.
Der nächst fettgedruckte sagt, aber der Entfleischwerdung des Sohnes Gottes, die Bestimmung des Himmels ist erfüllt.
Okay, so when Christ began to cleanse the temple, it was typifying the work of him cleansing us. We were this temple that had become defiled by sin. Right?
Also als Christus anfängt, das Tempel zu reinigen, es schattet voraus das Reinigen unseres menschlichen Tempels, also weil wir verschmutzt worden sind von Sünde, weil wir von der Sünde verschmutzt worden sind.
Okay, and then 2/3 of the way down, there's this last highlighted bit, it says,
2/3 nach unten, diese letzte fettgedruckte.
Jesus announced his mission to cleanse the heart of the defilement of sin from the earthly desires, the selfish lust, the evil habits that corrupt the soul. Right? So, from temple cleansing to temple cleansing was 3 years.
Also von Tempelreinigung zu Tempelreinigung war 3 Jahre in Zeit.
Right? It's marking a work where he's cleansing human beings, their hearts, of sin from this point to this point.
Also es markiert ein Werk, wo Christus den menschlichen Herzen reinigt von diesem Punkt bis diesem Punkt an.
Right? So all I'm trying to see is that when you take the large fractal from 17:9 1844 begins with a birth and ends in a birth, it's paralleling these two births at the beginning and the end of the binding off.
Also wenn du diese große Fraktal 1798 bis 1844 mit einer Geburt am Anfang und einer Geburt am Ende nimmst, ist parallel gestellt mit diesem Werk hier und diesem Tempel an.
So when the angel of Revelation 18 comes down, it's marking the combination of the human and the divine. That's what the temple cleansing was illustrated.
Also wenn der Engel aus Offenbarung 18, 1-3 kommt herunter, das markiert der Verbindung zwischen der menschlichen und das Göttliche und das ist gerade das, worüber es sich handelt beim Tempelreinigen.
Okay, next quote.
Nächste Zitat.
It says, the prophet says, I saw another angel come down from heaven having great power and the earth was light with his glory. That's this angel right here.
Er spricht gerade über diese Engel hier.
Right? In the middle of the paragraph it says,
Inmitten des Satzes sagt es weiter.
when do our sins reach up to heaven when the law of God is finally made void by legislation? Right? So the angel of Revelation 18 is marking the Sunday law. Right?
Also der Engel aus Offenbarung 18 markiert das Sonntagsgesetz,
Right? Which is the first temple cleansing.
was das erste Tempelreinigung ist.
Next quote.
Nächste Zitat.
It says, we are living in the time of the end. Thrones and churches have united to oppose God's purposes. What's that telling us?
Was sagt das uns hier? Der erste Satz.
Where the Sunday
Sunday law is the time of the end.
from the churches, yes.
So that's what we read. I was asking, what's it telling us?
So, was sagt es uns?
We're at the Sunday or
No, the Sunday law is the time of the end. Scott gave the answer.
Also das Sonntagsgesetz ist der Zeit des Endes.
Right?
yeah, but from the churches or
Yes, no, maybe not. I'm asking you, from that information, what's it telling us? It's telling us that the Sunday law is the time of the end.
Yes.
Right, that's what I was asking. Right. So the Sunday law is the time of the end, right?
Also das Sonntagsgesetz ist die Zeit des Endes.
So in the big fractal, you have the time of the end, a birth at the beginning, birth at the end, and exactly same here. You have a birth at the beginning, birth at the end, marked by the time of the end.
Im
Right?
großen Fraktal haben wir Zeit des Endes, eine Geburt am Anfang und am Ende. Und auf diese Fraktal hier haben wir auch Zeit des Endes, eine Geburt am Anfang und eine Geburt am Ende.
Right? So in Daniel 11:40,
Daniel 11, Vers 40.
Just a question, which birth do you mark at 1798?
well, the birth of a nation, but I'm not necessarily just taking 1790, I'm just using this because it's got 46 years, but all the time of the ends mark a birth, right?
Also alle Zeit des Endes markieren eine
Because you
Geburt.
bring them all together.
Man muss sie alle zusammenbringen. Aber 1798 markiert das Geburt eines Nations.
I think the birth of the nation has some other lines also a significance, so I just wanted to know if you mark it that.
I don't know what you
We can speak.
Okay. Okay, so Daniel 11:40, right?
Daniel 11, 40.
Okay, Philip, you want to read that for us, please?
And the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over.
Okay, so, right. What is happening at the time of the end?
So, was geschieht am Zeit des Endes?
It's a battle between south and north.
Right. That's, in simple terms, there's a war between the north and the south. Right?
Also auf einfache Weise, es gibt einen Krieg zwischen dem Süden und dem Norden.
Okay, so north, south. There's a war up there,
Also
right?
gibt es einen Krieg, der markiert.
So 1798, we know Daniel 11:40, the first part was fulfilled, and it's the whole thing is pointing to the Sunday law, right? Which are both the time of the end, right?
1798, das erste Teil von Daniel 40 und beide weisen zu Sonntagsgesetz hin, was wir wissen, dass Zeit des Endes ist.
Okay, now I want us to also understand that the Sunday law is prefigured by both Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar.
Ich möchte, dass wir auch sehen, dass der Sonntagsgesetz vorausgestattet ist durch Pharao und Nebukadnezar.
Okay, Spalding McGann 1.4.
Nächste Mini-Zitat hier.
I saw that the two-horned beast had a dragon's mouth, and that his power was in his head, and the decree would go out of his mouth. So, which nation is speaking the decree?
So, welche Nation spricht diesen Dekret hier?
The USA, right?
Also den USA.
Okay. So, in Jeremiah 51:34,
Jeremia 51, 34.
do you want to read that for us, please, Daniel?
Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had devoured me. He hath crushed me, he hath made me an empty vessel, he hath swallowed me up like a dragon, he hath filled his belly with my delicates,
Yes.
he hath cast me out.
Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar is likened unto a dragon, right?
Nebukadnezar wird hier wie ein Drache verglichen.
Okay, and Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon.
Nebukadnezar ist der König Babylons.
And it's the two-horned beast speaks like a dragon.
Das zweihörnige Tier spricht wie eine Drache.
Okay, so now this next quote confirms to us that Nebuchadnezzar is also the one that sets up the Sunday law.
Und dieses nächste Zitat hier bestätigt, dass es Nebukadnezar ist, der Sonntagsgesetz in Kraft setzt.
Okay, It says, an idol Sabbath has been set up as the golden image was set up in the plains of Judah, and as Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, issued a decree that all who would not bow down and worship this image should be killed. So a proclamation will be made that all who will not reverence the Sunday institution will be punished with imprisonment and death. So Nebuchadnezzar, who swallows up like a dragon, is the one that puts the Sunday law in place, right?
Also Nebukadnezar, der verschlingt wie eine Drache, der ist derjenige, der das Sonntagsgesetz in seinen Platz stellt, oder aufstellt.
Right, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Next quote.
Nächste Zitat, 3:10.
It says, as God called the children of Israel out of Egypt that they might keep his Sabbath, so he calls his people out of Babylon that they may not worship the beast or his image. Right? So, what's this message right here?
Also, was ist diese Botschaft gerade hier?
Okay. Babylon is fallen, come out of Babylon.
Babylon ist gefallen, kommt heraus.
Okay, so that's marking the Sunday law, right? We already read that.
Markiert das Sonntagsgesetz.
So when it likens the message coming out of Babylon, which is referenced to Nebuchadnezzar, right?
Also es vergleicht, diese Botschaft kommt aus Babylon heraus und das ist in Bezug auf Nebukadnezar.
To the call coming out of Egypt, right?
Also vergleicht es zu der Ruf aus Ägypten herauszukommen.
One particular. And we know that this waymark is marking the same point where Moses comes before Pharaoh, right?
Wir wissen Linie auf Linie, dass diese Wegmarkierung hier markiert der Punkt, wo Mose vor Pharao tritt.
In the quote from Prophets and Kings 714, sorry, where Sister White compares the 70 with the 1260.
Yes.
If you read further on, I think it's 1 or 2 paragraphs further down, she goes on in this and she says basically, because people have been in captivity at that time, but now they are set free, and she marks the first angel's message coming there, and she says, Babylon is fallen, right, and now the call comes to come out of Babylon.
Yes.
She links that all together and puts it right there. So the captivity is
When
over.
the captivity ends,
No.
at the time of the end.
Yes, and now come out of Babylon.
Yes, yes,
Should I put
Yes, please.
Also
You can explain.
es gibt halt ein Zitat in Propheten und Könige 714, in folgenden Paragraphen im Deutschen. Da verbindet Schwester White die 70 Jahre Gefangenschaft in Babylon mit den 1260-jährigen Gefangenschaft im geistlichen Babylon unter dem Papsttum. Und sie sagt, Gottes Volk war in Gefangenschaft und jetzt sind sie frei, und sie markiert dort die erste Engelsbotschaft und sagt dann, Babylon ist gefallen, und jetzt werden diejenigen aus Babylon herausgerufen. Das heißt, am Sonntagsgesetz markiert das Ende der Gefangenschaft und du wirst aus Babylon herausgerufen. Jetzt bist du aufgefordert, herauszukommen.
So at the time of the end,
Yes.
you're coming out of Babylon.
Zur
Right?
Zeit des Endes wirst du aus Babylon herauskommen.
Okay, the other point is in Ezekiel 29:3, it tells us that Pharaoh is the dragon, right?
Ezekiel 29, Vers 3, es sagt uns, dass Pharao der Drache ist.
So both Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, are both a symbol of the United States that makes the decree, right?
Also, sowohl Nebukadnezar, der König Babylons, und Pharao, der König Ägyptens, sind ein Symbol von den USA, die
Yes,
den Sonntagsgesetz macht, also den Drachen macht.
because there's a dragon's mouth, right? Speaks like a dragon.
Weil den USA hat den Mund eines Drachens, spricht wie ein Drache.
Okay, so next quote
Nächstes Zitat.
from Review and Herald, February the 7th, 1893.
RH, Februar 7. 1893.
This is the work now to be done on earth. Those who are living in transgression of the holy law of God will not find the truth palatable. When it is made plain that Sunday is a spurious Sabbath, founded in the power of the man of sin, they will say in language too plain to be misunderstood, we want not a knowledge of thy ways, O Lord. Others will say, as did Pharaoh, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? Right? So she parallels Pharaoh saying, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice, with the Sunday law.
So, sie vergleicht Pharao, der sagt, wer ist der Herr, dass ich seine Stimme gehorchen soll, mit dem Sonntagsgesetz.
Okay, we know that that's the way, Mark, with Moses stands before Pharaoh, right? And this is where he says that too, right?
Wir wissen, dass das gerade Linie auf Linie der Wegmarke ist, wo Mose vor Pharao steht und Pharao gerade das dem Moses sagt.
Okay, next quote
Nächste Zitat
from Patriarchs and Prophets.
von Patriarchen und Propheten.
The Sabbath institution, which originated in Eden, is as old as the world itself. It was observed by all the patriarchs from creation down. During the bondage in Egypt, the Israelites were forced by their taskmasters to violate the Sabbath, and to a great extent they lost the knowledge of its sacredness. When the law was proclaimed at Sinai, the very first words of the fourth commandment were, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy," showing that the Sabbath was not then instituted. We are pointed back to its origin to creation. So, whilst in Egypt, they were forced to break the Sabbath.
Während sie in Ägypten waren, sie waren gezwungen, den Sabbat zu entehren.
And that's why when Moses stands before Pharaoh in Exodus 5:5, it's all about the Sabbath issues, a type of the Sunday law.
Deswegen, wenn Mose hier in 2. Buch Mose 5, Vers 5 vor Pharao steht, ist es alles über den Sabbat. Es ist ein Typus auf das Sonntagsgesetz hin.
Okay, so now what I want to do is just look at this war between the north and the south.
Jetzt werden wir diese Krieg zwischen Norden und Süden anschauen.
Okay, so we're going to read this next quote
Dieses nächste Zitat
from First Testament.
vom ersten Band der Zeugnisse.
She starts and she says, "I was pointed back to ancient Israel, held in bondage by the Egyptians. The Lord wrought by Moses and Aaron to deliver them. Miracles were performed before Pharaoh to convince him that these men were especially sent of God to bid him let Israel go. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened against the messengers of God, and he reasoned away the miracles performed by them. Then the Egyptians were made to feel God's judgments. They were visited with plagues," right? So we have 1, 2, 3 plagues. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right?
3 Plagen und 1 bis 7 Plagen.
Okay. Okay, down to the next highlighted bit.
Und der nächste fett bedruckte Teil in dem Zitat.
It says, "Each visitation from God was more severe than the preceding one, yet they would not release the children of Israel until the angel of the Lord slew the firstborn of the Egyptians," which was right here at the end, right?
Gerade hier am Ende war die Erstgeborte, die Ägypter erschlagen.
Okay, now the last line of that paragraph,
Also der allerletzte Satz hier auf diesem Aufsatz,
it says,
Absatz.
"They would not admit that the visitation or judgment was from God, and therefore they pursued after the children of Israel." Right? So, now, when you come to the next paragraph,
Wenn wir zum nächsten Absatz kommen,
it says, "When the Israelites beheld the Egyptian host in pursuit, some upon horses and some in chariots and equipped for war, their hearts what?
was ist mit ihrem Herzen?
Failed them for fear."
Versagten sie durch Angst.
I want you to just keep that in mind because I want to put that in place in a little bit. Right?
Haltet das in Gedanken, denn wir werden darauf zurückkommen.
So, she first of all talks about this God's people and how they came out of Egypt.
Zuerst spricht sie über Gottes Volk und wie sie aus Ägypten herauskamen.
Okay, and those 10 plagues are an illustration of the Sunday law crisis until they are released from their bondage.
Und diese 10 Plagen sind eine Darstellung von Sonntagsgesetz bis zu der Punkt, wo sie von ihrer Gefangenschaft befreit werden.
So, next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
This scene was presented before me to illustrate the selfish love of slavery and the desperate measures which the South would adopt to cherish the institution and the dreadful lengths to which they would go before they would yield. This system of slavery has reduced and degraded human beings to the level of the brutes, and the majority of slave masters regard them as such. The consciences of these masters have become seared and hardened, as was Pharaoh's. So, was she now paralleling the bondage in Egypt to?
Also mit was vergleicht sie der Gefangenschaft in Ägypten?
Pharaoh. Oh, sorry, the husbands. Slaves.
Okay, what slaves?
Also welche Sklaven?
South.
I mean, she compares the slaves in the USA with the slaves in
Yes,
Egypt.
so but what's it's not just about slaves in the USA. What's taking place at that time?
Or
A war.
War between whom?
No.
Also es ist nicht nur über Sklaven in den USA zu dieser Zeit, sondern es gibt einen Krieg zwischen Norden und Süden in den
So-
USA.
Pharaoh is this whole thing about slavery, being released from slavery, is the Sunday law crisis, right?
Pharao, dieses ganze Thema über Sklaven, die freigesetzt werden, das ist diese Sonntagsgesetzkrise.
And Pharaoh is marking this point at the time of the end, right?
Pharao, markiert diesen Punkt zur Zeit des Endes,
Which is the Sunday law.
was das Sonntagsgesetz ist.
So, and at the time of the end, you have a war between the north and the south.
Zur Zeit des Endes hat man einen Krieg zwischen Norden und Süden.
She's taken the war in the north and the south in Daniel 11:40 and paralleling it to the war between the north and the south in the United States Civil War,
Sie
right?
nimmt den Krieg zwischen den Norden und Süden in Daniel 11, Vers 40 mit dem Krieg in den USA zwischen Norden und Süden.
Okay, which was a war all about slavery.
Was
right?
ein Kampf war oder ein Krieg war, was alles um die Sklaverei dreht.
Okay. Last line there.
Die letzte Linie.
It says, all the abuse and cruelty exercised toward the slave is justly chargeable to the upholders of the slave system, whether they be southern or northern men, right? Because there was both people in the north that upheld slavery, even though they claimed to be fighting the south to abolish slavery. It was,
Es gab Menschen in den Norden, die den Sklaverei hochgehalten haben, obwohl sie in den Kampf gegen den Süden eingetreten sind, um den Sklaverei wegzutun.
this Philip.
The first question mentions how after they escaped from Egypt, the Pharaoh still wanted to get more slaves.
Yes.
Okay.
Also in der ersten Zitat, sie erwähnt, dass obwohl das Pharao und nachdem sie Ägypten verlassen haben, dass Pharao sie nachgegangen ist, weil er sie wieder als Sklaven haben wollte.
I just want to mention this for context because in the second quote, she wrote it after the Civil War, saying that likewise as Pharaoh, now that the slaves are free, the slaveholders still want to make the slaves feel their oppressive power, like Pharaoh.
Und das ist auch nach der Bürgerkrieg in den USA, diese Sklaventreiber, die wollten immer noch ihre Sklaven haben.
Would we mark this at the Sunday law that they still want to do the abolition?
No. Because we'll come to that point. Remember, I says mark that point. It says their hearts failed them for fear. Right? So we need to.
Wir sollen daran denken, an diesen Punkt, die wir merken sollen, dass ihrem Herzen versagten sich durch Angst. Also das sollten wir noch nach wie vor dran denken. Wir werden darauf zurückkommen.
We'll come to that, right? So, okay, now she jumps. I just jumped down a couple of paragraphs in the same chapter in 1 Testimonies, and we're going to read this this quote.
Also im ersten Band der Zeugnisse bleiben wir, aber wir überspringen ein paar Sätze und kommen hinunter. How does it begin?
Paragraphs, not sentences.
Yes, how does it begin?
Just go to the next paragraph.
I was shown the inhabitants of the earth and the atoms.
I'm not jumping over in the notes. I'm saying I'm
Yes.
jumping over in the chapter.
Okay, in den Notizen zum nächsten, wir kommen zum nächsten Absatz, aber das ist in der Kapitel, haben wir ein paar
Ja.
Sätze ausgelassen.
Two pages.
Okay.
Okay, so now, point I want to make, right? So she's making this out to be, or she's paralleling the Sunday law crisis to the American Civil War, right?
Also sie vergleicht hier der Sonntagsgesetzkrise mit der amerikanischen Bürgerkrieg.
Right? How many years was the American Civil War?
Wie lange dauerte der amerikanische Bürgerkrieg an?
4 years, right?
4 Jahre.
It was 1861 to 1865.
war 1861 bis 1865.
Okay. Now, when that war came to an end, the Adventists, who were aware of this quote, we will read it and then we will discuss this point.
Also wenn dieser Krieg zu Ende gekommen ist, also die Adventisten zu diesen Zeit, die waren bewusst über diesen Zitaten. Wir werden es zuerst lesen und dann darauf eingehen.
It says, I was shown the inhabitants of the earth in the utmost confusion. War, bloodshed, privation, want, famine and pestilence were abroad in the land. As these things surrounded God's people, they began to press together and to cast aside their little difficulties. Self-dignity no longer controlled them, deep humility took its place, suffering, perplexity and privation ceased. It caused reason to resume its throne, and the passionate and unreasonable man became sane and acted with discretion and wisdom. So, in the first paragraph there, what does it remind you of?
Also in der erste Absatz hier, zu was denkt, an was bringt das unser Gedanken?
We have Matthew 24, right? The first sign, right?
Matthäus 24, der erste Zeichen.
War, bloodshed, famine and pestilence, right?
Also Kriege, das Blutvergießen, also der Pest und Hungersnot.
Okay, you can see that, right? And then, next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
My attention was then called from the scene. There seemed to be a little time of peace. Once more the inhabitants of the earth were presented before me, and again everything was in the utmost confusion. Strife, war and bloodshed, with famine and pestilence raged everywhere. Other nations were engaged in this war and confusion. War caused famine, war and bloodshed caused pestilence, and then men's hearts failed them for fear. Where did we read that earlier?
Also hier haben wir das wieder, Menschenherzen versagen sich durch Angst. Wo haben wir das schon bereits gelesen?
Okay, right, so we'll come back to that point. But where do we read that from? And men's hearts failing them for fear.
Aber wo lesen wir das her? Menschenherzen versagen sich durch Angst.
Luke 21, right?
Lukas 21.
It's the second sign, right?
Das ist der zweite Zeichen.
So we know that the first sign in the Sunday law in Matthew 24 is marking the shaking of the angry nations right here.
Also wir wissen, dass das erste Zeichen Matthäus 24 hier am Sonntagsgesetz markiert der Erschütterung der Erde, also die zornige Nation.
So shaking of the earth.
Erschütterung der Erde.
And the second sign is the shaking of
Das zweite Zeichen
heaven and earth.
ist die Erschütterung des Himmels und der Erde.
Right? And this was the sign that marked that Christ's coming was imminent, right?
Das war der Zeichen, der markiert, dass das Kommen Christi kurz bevorsteht.
Okay. So, after the American Civil War, right, which is paralleling this first shaking of the earth, right?
Also nach der amerikanische Bürgerkrieg, was parallel steht zu dieser ersten Erschütterung hier,
God's people in that time were looking, right, for this, you know, they thought they were in this little time of peace now, and great was going to come this big war, but it never came.
also Gottes Volk haben gedacht, dass sie in diese kleine Zeit des Friedens oder dieser Ruhe war, und die haben erwartet, dass dieser Riesenkrieg denn plötzlich ausbrechen wird, was aber nicht kam.
But they were right in recognizing that, they just didn't understand that it was only a type that was being marked in history.
Also die waren zwar richtig in dem, dass sie das erkannt haben, aber dass das nur ein Typus war in der Geschichte.
But I want us to also remember that Matthew 24 verses 6 to 8, the shaking of the earth, is also marking 1848, right?
Ich möchte auch, dass wir sehen, dass Matthäus 24, die Verse 6 bis 8, also diese Erschütterung, ist markiert auch 1848.
In 1848 you have the south coming against the north, just like you have in Daniel 11:40, right?
Und in 1848, man hat den Süden gegen den Norden kommend, genauso wie in Daniel 11, Vers 40.
And in 1848, where did the war break out?
Und wo ist dieser Krieg ausgebrochen, 1848?
France.
In Europe,
In Europa.
right? It was in Europe, right? And the 10 portions, the 10 kingdoms there on the chart, right? Where are they? Where were they prefigured?
Und
What did they represent?
diese 10 Nationen da auf der Karte markiert, sorry, what did you represent? So, was stellen Sie da?
No, it was Europe.
Also es war eine Darstellung von Europa.
Yeah, they typify the whole world, but I'm saying that the war here was in Europe. The 10 parts that were broken on the statue there was representing Europe.
Also natürlich schatten sie am Ende der Welt die ganze Welt voraus, aber hier der Krieg in Europa, diese 10 Zerteilungen, die stellen das ganze Welt dar, also so diese ganze Statue.
And I want us to see that this quote that we're reading there with these 2 times of trouble is were typified more perfectly in that time with the First and the Second World War.
Und ich möchte, dass wir sehen, dass diese 2 Zeiten der Drangsal mit dieser kleinen Zeit der Ruhe inzwischen sind mehr perfekt erfüllt mit den Ersten und Zweiten Weltkriegen.
So the First World War was how many years?
Also der Erste Weltkrieg war wie lange?
4 years.
4 Jahre.
1914 to 1918. So both represent 4 years, right?
1914 bis 1918 jeweils 4 Jahre lang.
Okay, so you can see how they're both paralleling each other, right?
Wir können sehen, wie sie die beide einander gleich parallel gestellt werden.
Right? Then there's a little time of peace, right?
Dann gibt es diese kleine Zeit des Friedens.
Right? And between the 2 wars, how many years was that?
Und zwischen diese beiden Kriege, wie viele Jahre gab es?
21, right?
21.
Okay. And then the Second World War was 6 years,
Der
right?
Zweite Weltkrieg war 6 Jahre lang.
Okay, so when you understand this, right, and you begin to look at it, here you have 46 years from 1798 to 1844, and again, that symbol is being repeated here by this 4 and 6, right?
Fängt an, das zu verstehen. Also hier haben wir 46 Jahre zwischen 1798 und 1844 und hier derselbe Symbol wird wiederholt in dieser Zeit des Bindens hier.
Okay, so when you bring line upon line together, it's trying to show us that the whole gospel, which is the 7 thunders, is marked right in here in the Bible.
Linie auf Linie, wenn wir das zusammenbringen, das gesamte Evangelium gekennzeichnet durch diese 7 Donnern, sind alle gerade hier in der Zeit des Bindens zu finden.
Okay, but what I want to do now is just read this next statement from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Germany 100 years after the First World War.
Aber was ich jetzt lesen möchte, ist diese Aussage von den 7-Tages-Adventist-Gemeinde in Deutschland 100 Jahre nach dem Ersten Weltkrieg.
Okay, it says, on July 28, 1914, a war broke out where?
Wo brach dieser Krieg aus?
Europe, right?
Europa.
Okay, so you can see how 1848, the American Civil War, Daniel 11:40, and this, they're all sort of types and all sort of paralleling each other.
Wir sehen, dass 1848 der amerikanische Bürgerkrieg, Daniel 11, Vers 40 und das hier sind alle Typen, die einander parallel gestellt werden.
Its dimensions eclipsed everything before it. Many Adventists saw the outbreak of the Great War as a sign of the end of the world. Right? Were they right?
Also waren sie richtig, dass es ein Zeichen auf das Ende der Welt war.
Yes. I mean, there's something. It's a sign.
Of the end of the world?
I mean,
Okay, wait,
just
stop. Let's go to Matthew 24. So let's
Lass
see
uns-
what...
yeah, the end is not come. That's
Oh.
Okay, so let's go. So, verse 3.
Vers 3. Matthäus 24, Vers 3.
It says, and as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? Right? So what sign did they want?
So, welche Zeichen wollten sie sehen?
The sign for the end of the world, right?
Das Zeichen für das Ende der Welt.
Did he give them that?
Gab ihnen dieses Zeichen?
Is the first sign the sign for the end of the world?
Ist das erste Zeichen das Zeichen für das Ende der Welt?
No, it's not.
Nein, ist es nicht.
Yeah, you use
No, I'm going. I asked the question, and it's what it says there, right? They said, right? It says, let me read it again. Many Adventists saw the outbreak of the Great War as a sign of the end of the world. And I asked, is it a right, correct sign? You went, yes, right?
It's because I thought, like Cestius is a sign for the end of the world. So it's for
But
future point in
But
time. That
just
was my.
let's stick to what God's word says, right? Because it says, in verse 6,
Vers 6 sagt es.
and ye shall hear of wars and rumours of wars, see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet, right? So, okay, the sign that will, if we go to Luke 21,
Gehen wir jetzt zu Lukas 21.
verse 29.
Vers 29.
In fact, let's begin in verse 20.
Wir beginnen im Vers 28.
And when these things begin to come to pass, which things?
Welche Dinge, die anfangen zu geschehen?
Men's hearts failing them for fear, right?
Also Menschenherzen, die sich durch Angst versagen.
Is men's hearts failing them for fear the first sign or the second one?
So Menschenherzen, die durch Furcht versagen, ist das erste oder zweite Zeichen?
The second,
Das
right?
zweite.
So when these things, men's hearts failing them for fear, begin to come to pass,
Wenn diese Dinge anfangen zu geschehen, also Menschenherzen sich vor Angst versagen,
then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And he spake to them a parable. Behold the fig tree and all the trees. When they now shoot forth, ye see and know of your own selves that summer is now nigh at hand. So likewise, when ye see these things come to pass, know ye that the kingdom of God is nigh at hand. That's the sign they were looking for, right?
das ist der Zeichen, die sie gesucht haben.
Okay, but that's why he gave them this other one first. Says this has got to come before it, but it's not yet. But when this one comes, that's the sign that you're looking for.
Deswegen hat Christus ihnen diese erste Zeichen zuerst gegeben, aber gesagt, wenn das geschieht, wisse, dass es nicht das Ende ist. Und dann hat er das hier erklärt, das ist der Zeichen, die ihr wissen wollt.
So when you go back to this statement,
Also wenn wir zurück zu unseren Notizen, zu dieser Aussage gehen,
it says, many Adventists saw the outbreak of the Great War as a sign of the end of the world. Were the many right?
viele Adventisten haben das Anfangen von der große Krieg, Erste Weltkrieg, als ein Zeichen der Ende der Welt gesehen. Waren sie richtig?
Many are never right.
Okay, so what about 1848?
Die viele sind nie richtig. Was ist mit 1848?
Was there many there that were also saying that it was the end of the world?
Gab es viele in 1848, die auch gesagt haben, dass das das Ende der Welt wäre?
Yes, right?
Ja.
But the true Seventh-day Adventists knew that a message had to be proclaimed,
Aber
right?
die wahren Siebentagsadventisten, die wussten, dass vorerst eine Botschaft gegeben werden muss.
Okay, it goes on, it says, before the war, many Adventists had served in the military but refused to carry out duties on Sabbath, risking potentially severe penalties. Now, other Adventists considered it part of the preparation for the imminent return of Jesus. So what did they see it as?
Also was haben diese anderen Adventisten es gesehen?
This coming is near. It's a sign for his near approach.
doesn't say that. They said it's a preparation, right?
So eine Vorbereitung.
Okay. So other Adventists consider it a part of the preparation for the imminent return of Jesus to refuse to carry weapons or to participate in the military immunization program. Right? So, two things marked right in here in the First World War. What did they refuse to do?
Ersten Weltkrieg, zwei Sachen, die hier markiert sind. Was haben diese Siebentags-Adventisten geweigert?
Carry weapons and immunization.
Okay, let's deal with the first thing. They refused to carry weapons,
Die
right?
haben sich geweigert, Waffen zu tragen.
Why is that important prophetically?
Prophetisch, warum ist das wichtig? Okay.
Because they will, it will repeat, right? It's like in 61 or 63 when they will, what's the right English word for it? Draft.
There was a draft, right?
Also es gab einen Einzug. Einzug?
Ja.
Es gab einen Einzug.
It's a draft, you know, they force you to carry a weapon and go into war.
Unter einen Einzug, die zwingen dich, eine Waffe zu tragen und in den Krieg zu
So
ziehen.
what did they do?
So was taten sie?
You mean the Adventists?
Yes. What did they do?
Von
Go
Church.
out of the
No, yes, okay.
Oh, they made themselves official.
Yes, they formed an official structure, right? Appointed a king over themselves,
Also
right?
sie formierten eine offizielle Kirchenstruktur und sie haben einen König über sich
On the
gestellt.
21st of March.
Yeah, on the
Oh,
yes,
yes.
21. März.
right. But
25 elders.
yes,
On
Mit
25
25 Älteste. Genau.
Which year?
1843.
1863.
Ach so, okay.
Yes, 63. Right. So the point that lost my thought now.
Two things.
Now the point that I want to make is that when in the Old Testament, when they picked a king, was it a good thing or a bad thing?
Also in der Alte Testament, wenn sie einen König gewählt haben, war das eine gute oder eine schlechte Sache?
It was a bad
Das
thing,
war eine
right?
schlechte Sache.
Okay, it was a rebellion. They rejected Christ,
Es war
right?
eine Rebellion, die haben Christus verworfen.
So you can see that history there when this war between the North and the South began, it led them down to a point where they formed a new organization, right? They picked a king, and it was prefigured in history as a rebellion to avoid the draft, right?
Krieg führte dazu, dass sie einen König gewählt haben um diesen Einzug eine Rebellion, um diesen Einzug zu verweigern.
Okay, so the next point, they failed to take immunization.
Fehlt.
Yeah, they refused.
Also refused. Also sie weigerten sich, die Impfungsprogramm zu unterziehen.
That's maybe when Corona.
Das weiß ich.
Okay, right? So what is it? Pestilence? What is pestilence?
Also hier der Pest, was ist das? Seuche. Seuche.
Ja.
It's disease, right?
Das ist Krankheit, ne?
So this coronavirus.
Also dieser Coronavirus.
Very badly spreading the disease.
Yes, I sent a video to people. Some of you might not have seen it, or some of you might have seen it. But basically, they had a meeting with all the generals in America.
Also
This senator, and he's basically explaining to them that China's been lying, and this is a pandemic, and it's much more contagious
Yes.
than they ever imagined, and etc.
es gab diese Treffen mit diesem amerikanischen Senator, mit den ganzen Generale in Amerika, und der erklärte, dass China haben gelogen zu der Welt und dass diese Seuche ist viel, I don't know what a pandemic is, aber es ist viel schlimmer.
Epidemie. Oh,
Epidemie, ja, genau.
Epidemie.
Es ist eine
Pandemie.
Pandemie.
Ja.
Und ist viel schlimmer, als dass sie hergeben und dass die müssen irgendwie extreme Maßnahmen. Und did you say the end? What, the last thing that you said about you said that about the vaccines?
No, I haven't said anything about it yet. I'm just saying what it is. And the point is that the last thing that was said in that meeting is that all the scientists should come together and work furiously to find a vaccine.
Und das allerletzte, was in diesem Meeting gesagt worden ist, ist, dass alle Wissenschaftler ihre Köpfe schnell zusammentun müssen, um eiligst schnell eine Impfung gegen diese Pandemie zu finden.
So when they find a vaccine, what do you think is going to happen?
Also wenn Sie eine Impfung finden, was glaubt ihr geschehen wird?
Immunization.
Yeah, forced immunization,
Also
right?
die werden euch zwingen zu die Impfungsprogramme an.
You can be sure that that was all purposeful, right?
Ihr konntet sicher sein, dass das alles seine Absicht hat.
So, and it's no accident that in history their martyr is refusing immunization,
Und
right?
es ist kein Unfall, dass da in der Geschichte ist es markiert, dass sie diese Impfprogramm geweigert haben.
Okay, let's read on, right?
Let's
You see
read on.
that's already been prefigured in this temple.
Wir sehen, dass das schon vorausgeschattet ist in diese Zeitperiode. Sorry?
After the war, there were so many dying of this sickness in 1918.
No, they were dying of the bird
Yeah.
flu,
Spanish.
Spanish flu, sorry.
But they were also making for this Impfung.
No.
Okay, let's concentrate on what we're looking at here.
Lass uns weiterlesen.
However, shortly after the general mobilization on August the 2nd, 1914, the Central European leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Hamburg issued a circular letter to the Adventist congregations in Germany, recommending insofar as we are members of the military or receive orders to enlist in military service, we should fulfill our military duties wholeheartedly and with joy. In Joshua 6 we read that the children of God bore weapons and also served on Sabbath. This letter and other publications provoked a complex protest in Adventist congregations, leading to tensions and divisions. In 1915, this state of affairs led to the rising of a separate organization, the self-designated Reform Movement, which accused its mother church, the Greater Church, of a Babylonian apostasy from the true Advent faith. So, this history, the First World War, what did it produce?
Also diese Geschichte, der Erste Weltkrieg, was hat es produziert?
A separation, people coming out of Mother Church and calling her Babylon.
Also
Right?
eine Trennung, ein Volk, der aus der Mutterkirche herauskommt und sie Babylon nennt.
So what's the Reform Movement typified?
Also was schattet diese Reformbewegung voraus?
Yes, right here.
Der kleinbetende Schar.
Calling the Adventist Church Babylon, saying come out of Babylon, because this marks the point, right?
Adventist Gemeinde Babylon und sagt, kommt aus ihr heraus, gerade an diesem Punkt.
There's also
Great controversy. She also speaks about the angel of Revelation 18 representing a movement.
yes,
during the
that's
last
right.
one.
Yes.
So einen großen Kampf. White spricht über der Engel von Offenbarung 18, spricht über eine Bewegung.
Right. So, and it was also in April 19th, which also marks this way. What happened?
19. April, was auch Linie auf Linie diese Wegmarke markiert. Was geschah da?
Yeah, there was a group came out of the Protestant churches called the Protestant churches Babylon.
Es war eine Gruppe, die aus den protestantischen Gemeinden herausgekommen sind und hat sie Babylon genannt. Also genau dasselbe.
Okay, so you can see how the First World War is very nicely fits in there for this time period.
Wir können sehen, wie der Erste Weltkrieg richtig schön da reinpasst.
Okay. Okay, I will go through this more later. So just we know that in Matthew 24 you have Cestes and Titus, right?
Also in Matthäus 24 haben wir Sestius und Titus.
And Cestes and Titus would also be a type of these two wars and rumors of wars, right?
Sestius und Titus werden auch jeweils Typen für diese zwei Kriege und Kriegsgerüchten.
But I want to go over that, those two things separately.
Aber ich möchte diese beiden Dinge getrennt voneinander auslegen.
Right? So you can see this quote where she's reading about the wars and the rumors of wars and all that sort of stuff, and then a little time of peace, and then Again, it comes up, it's prefigured by many things in history.
Wir können sehen, dass dieses Zitat, wo sie sagt, Kriege und Kriegsgerüchte und dann diese Zeit des Friedens und dann kommt es wieder auf, dass das vorausgestattet ist, öftersmals durch die Geschichte.
Okay, so okay, right. I'm going to do this now. No, I'll go over this at a separate point. Jump down jump down to page 7
Also kommt in den Notizen runter zur Seite 7
and go under the heading Second World War.
und unter der Titel Zweiter Weltkrieg. Page 7, auf Seite 6 auf meiner Notiz.
It's right at the top of page 7, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Second
Page
War.
6 is just the heading.
Not by me, no.
If you're all working off a Word document,
I'm on Word document,
yes,
yes,
but
but
you're on a pad, it's different. So, okay, so anyway, under the head Second World War, the heading back to, this is the second part of the quote from First Testament.
Also das hier ist der zweite Teil des Zitats von 1. Band des Zeugnisses.
Okay, so it says, once more the inhabitants of the earth were presented before me, and again everything was in the utmost confusion. Strife, war, and bloodshed, with famine and pestilence, raged everywhere. Other nations were engaged in this war and confusion. War caused famine, want and bloodshed caused pestilence, and then men's hearts failed them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. And we see this in Luke 21, verses 25 and 26.
Das, was wir gelesen haben, können wir auch in Lukas 21, 25 und 26 lesen.
Do you want to read that for us, please, Sandra?
And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity. The seas and the waves roar, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven and for the powers shall be shaken. Heaven.
Okay. Powers of heaven shall be shaken, right? So you can see that it's marking the second time, which is parallel in Titus, where this, as it says, the sea and waves are roaring.
Also wir können sehen, dass das markiert der zweite Teil hier, markiert von Titus, und es erwähnt auch, dass der See und die Wellen die toben.
Okay, now we're not going to deal with Jonah, and here we're going to deal with Jonah also separately.
Also wir werden Jonas jetzt hier nicht einbringen, also wir werden das auch getrennt machen.
Now, if you just go to this next quote from Great Controversy 31,
Also zu diesem nächsten Zitat von Großen Kampf 31.
it says, terrible were the calamities that fell upon Jerusalem when the siege was resumed by Titus. The city was invested at the time of the what? The Passover, right? Okay, what do you have right here?
Also was haben wir gerade hier markiert? Also der Passa.
Okay, so you can see that this is also nailing in this thing with Titus, right?
Also es macht sicher dieses Ding mit Titus hier.
Okay, now, just as a thought, so I don't lose this thought, there's obviously a difference between the First World War and the Second World War, right?
Also nur als Gedanke, so dass ich es nicht vergesse, es gibt hier einen Unterschied zwischen der Erste und der Zweite Weltkrieg.
Right? What's the difference?
Was ist der Unterschied?
The killing of the Arden.
Right. A point I want to make here, the Reformed Church in the Second World War were completely cut off from the nation. They basically disowned them as a nation.
Also ich möchte sagen, dass der Reformgemeinde hier in der Zweiten Weltkrieg war total abgeschnitten von der Nation. They disowned the nation or the nation disowned
The
them?
nation disowned them.
Also der Nation hat sie total
Entehrt.
nicht entehrt, nicht anerkannt, also enteignet. Danke.
Disown them.
Means that they don't class you as a citizen anymore.
You're vogelfrei.
So, all earthly support was cut.
Yes, all that is
Alle irdische Unterstützung war abgeschnitten.
You can read that, just go and read about the Reform movement during the Second World War.
Ihr könnt das lesen, wenn man nur über die Reformgemeinde während des Zweiten Weltkriegs.
Many of them were put in concentration camps.
Also viele von denen kamen in den Todescamps, also Konzentrationslagern. Sorry?
Konzentrationslager.
Mhm.
No, actually.
Passt.
Okay. And we know that right in the Second World War that Jews that typify Seventh-day Adventists were murdered in their millions.
Wir wissen unter dem Zweiten Weltkrieg, dass die Juden, was Siebentags-Adventisten vorausschatten, waren millionenweise zerstört.
Okay? So when you come face to face with death right here, there's going to be many martyrs, right?
Also
That's
wenn
what
du vor dem Angesicht des Todes hier kommst, es wird viele Märtyrer geben.
Okay. Now, I'm just going to put this last bit in place. So, because I want to go over this tomorrow, but I want to do it from a different angle and I want to put more things in place.
Also morgen möchte ich das fortfahren, aber ich möchte es von ein anderes Blickwinkel betrachten und andere Sachen da hinzufügen.
Okay. So, go to 2 Kings chapter 2.
Gehen wir zum 2. Könige, Kapitel 2 in unserer Bibel.
Right, story of Elisha and Elijah.
Das ist die Geschichte von Elia und Elias.
Right, the story of Elijah and Elisha. Right, Elijah is about to hand over to Elisha, but first of all, he tests him 3 times. Right.
Also Elias steht kurz davor, Elia den Übergabe zu geben, aber zuvor prüft er ihn oder testet er ihn 3-mal.
During the tarrying time. Right.
Während der Verzögerungszeit.
So 3 times he says, I won't leave you.
So 3-mal sagt Elia, dass er den Elias nicht verlassen wird.
And what happens then? You have these 50 sons of the prophets, they come up to watch what's going to happen.
Und dann gibt es diese 50 Prophetensöhne, die heraufkommen, um das Ganze zu beobachten.
Right. So this point right here, right, we're just going to take them now. It's marking right here. Right?
So diese Mitternachtsrufpunkt hier, wir machen das einfach hier und auf.
Okay. So what one wants to see now is that this is the test for the virgins right here at the midnight cry, which is, I just put it in here. The 9th hour would be here. So this portion here is this.
Also
Right?
was ihr sehen möchtet, ist, dass das hier ist dieser Test hier, so 6. bis 9. Stunde für diese Gruppe hier,
For the virgins.
für die Jungfrauen.
Right? So, those 50 men come up to watch, right? Marking, it's a symbol of Pentecost.
Diese 50 Männer, die heraufkommen, um zu betrachten, das ist ein Symbol für Pfingsten.
What's Revelation 18 a symbol of?
Was symbolisiert Offenbarung 18?
Pentecost, right?
Pfingsten.
Always asking in relation to what we're talking about, right? So, go now. Just let's put this. Go now to verse 8.
Also in 2. Kings. 2. Könige 2, Vers 8.
It says, and Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together and smote the waters, and they were divided hither and thither, so that the 2 went over on dry ground. Right? So, what's being illustrated here?
So was wird hier dargestellt?
What happened to the water?
Was ist mit dem Wasser geschehen?
And they smelled it a little bit. It rose up on two sides, right?
Das Wasser stellte sich auch auf zwei Seiten.
And they walked across on dry ground.
Die sind auf trockenem Boden übergegangen.
What's it a type of? Or what is it parallel to?
Was ist das ein Parallel?
Crossing the Red Sea, right?
Überqueren des Roten Meeres.
And also Jordan.
That's where they're right there, right? So just keep your place there. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10.
So, haltet euren Platz hier und geht zum 1. Korinther 10.
And Susie, read verses 1 and 2, please.
1. Korinther 10, die Verse 1 und 2.
Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea.
So the crossing over of the Red Sea is likened unto a baptism, right?
Das Überqueren des Roten Meeres wird verglichen wie eine Taufe.
So when Elijah smites the waters,
So, wenn
Elijah smites the waters.
Yeah.
Elia das Wasser schlägt,
What's the waters?
was sind diese Gewässer?
The nations, right?
Nationen.
Right. So the nations are being smitten. Is that in agreement with the Sunday law?
Die Nationen werden erschlagen. Ist das in Übereinstimmung mit der Sonntagsgesetz?
National apostasy brings national ruin, right?
Nationaler Abfall, Abfall bringt nationale Ruhe.
So when the waters are smitten, what happens to the waters?
So, wenn diese Wasser zerschlagen werden, was geschieht mit ihnen?
They're separated, right?
Sie werden getrennt.
What's this?
Was ist das?
Separation of the world. Is the south coming against the north? Is the whole world, right?
So eine Zertrennung in der Welt, die Süden gegen die Norden.
So you have this division in the world right here, and it's marking
Zerteilung in der Welt hier.
a birth, right? Because a baptism is a type of a birth.
Und das markiert hier ein Geburt, denn eine Taufe, das ist eine Art von Geburt.
Right? So, verse 9.
Vers 9.
And it came to pass when they were gone over that Elijah said unto Elisha, Ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee. And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon thee. And he said, Thou hast asked a hard thing, nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee, but if not, it shall not be so. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horse of fire, and parted them both asunder, and Elijah went up by upper window to heaven. Right? So we know right here that this is, you have these 5 days or 5 plagues marked there, right?
Also wir wissen hier, dass wir diese 5 Tage oder diese 5 Plagen hier markiert
This
haben.
is the 6th,
Ja, hier ist der 6.
right? The 6th day, what were they to gather?
Also am 6. Tag, was sollen sie sammeln?
Double measure of manna, right?
Doppelte Portion des Mannas.
And on the 6th day, God created man perfect in his image, right?
Am 6. Tag, Gott hat den Mensch perfekt nach seinem Ebenbild kreiert.
So what is this test right here?
So, was ist diese Prüfung hier?
It's the 6th day where you get this double portion where God is going to make you perfect in his image,
Das ist
right?
der 6. Tag, wo du diese doppelte Portion erhielst und Gott dich perfekt nach seinem Ebenbild kreieren wird.
And it's typified by these 2 lines,
Und es
right?
wird vorausgestattet durch diese 2 Linien.
Right? Because what is the 46?
Denn was ist diese 46?
What did Moses receive on Mount Sinai?
Was hat Moses auf Sinai erhalten?
2 tables, right?
2 Tafeln.
And they typify what?
Sie schaffen was voraus?
Your heart,
Ein
right?
Herz.
Remember Christ, when he announces, when he begins his public ministry, what's he announcing?
Also als Christus hier seinen öffentlichen Dienst verkündet, was verkündigt er?
The cleansing of the heart. Here he says it's done, right?
Das Reinigen des Menschenherzens bis zum Ende, wo sagt, es ist vollbracht.
So this 46 right here is representing how he's going to take his law and stick it on your heart. He's going to make you perfect in Christ Jesus, right?
Diese 46, das markiert, dass Christus dieses Gesetz nehmen wird und in dein Herz schreiben wird, dass du perfekt wirst in Christus.
Okay, he's going to write it on the 2 tables of your heart,
Er wird es
right?
auf den 2 Tafeln unseres Herzens schreiben.
Right?
Amen.
Okay, so verse 12.
Vers 12.
And Elisha saw and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more, and he took hold of his own clothes and rent them into pieces. Right? So, when Elisha shouted, my father, what was it signifying?
Aber wenn Elia schrie, mein Vater,
Elisha.
Yes,
Elisa.
Elisa.
Yes. Elia is Elijah.
Wenn er schrie, mein Vater, was bedeutet das?
Christ at the cross at the 9th hour, right?
Christus am Kreuz zur 9. Stunde.
Okay, and Elisha was a type of Christ, right?
Und Elisa war ein Typus für Christus.
Okay, so it's marking the point where the work's done now, right? And
Markiert der Punkt, wo das Werk vollendet ist.
in verse 13,
Vers 13.
he took up also the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and went back and stood by the bank of Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and smote the waters and said, where is the Lord God of Elijah? And when he also had smitten the waters, they parted hither and thither, and Elisha went over. Right? So you have a smiting of the waters at the beginning and at the end.
So du hast ein Erschlagen des Gewässers hier am Anfang und auch am Ende,
Which is a birth.
was auch ein Geburt ist.
So you can see the pattern is perfect, right?
Wir können sehen, dass der Muster ist vollkommen.
Okay. So this is the effect of every vision. You have the 7 thunders in here, the 3 angels' messages, the blotting out of sin, the 2 births.
Das hier ist der Erfüllung eines jedes Vision. Wir haben hier die 7 Donnern hier drin, die 2 Geburten, die, what else did you say? 7 thunders, 2 births,
3 angels'
die
messages.
3 Engelsbotschaften.
Okay. Okay, last point that I want to make now, right, is that, because there's other things that we could put in there, but okay, go to Job chapter 2.
Also gehen wir zum Hiob Kapitel 2.
Now, if this 4 and 6 in this illustration is marking 2 times the trouble, then what must it do also in here?
Also wenn diese 4 und 6 hier auf dieser Linie markieren 2 Zeiten des Trübsals, was muss es auch hier markieren?
Same, right? It's just
Dasselbe.
it's a fractal. That's why I put this little thing in the middle.
Ein Fraktal, deswegen habe ich hier diese Wegmarke in der Mitte.
So Job gets tested. He gets his first test here, right, and then his second test here.
Also Hiob, der getestet wird, erhält seinen ersten Test hier und seine zweite hier.
And this one is here, right?
Und dieser zweite Test ist hier.
So let's go to his second test,
So, lasst uns zu den zweiten Test von Hiob gehen,
verse 7.
Vers 7.
So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. Right? So, and if you go to Revelation 16, 1 and 2,
Und wenn wir zur Offenbarung 16, 1 und 2, das sind in die Notizen.
Daniela, do you want to read that for us, please?
And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, go your ways and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the man which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image.
Okay.
What's what she just read? The notes?
Yes,
Yes.
that one is
Page
16.
8.
Offenbarung 16, 1. Also,
Last page.
und der Hiobs zweite Test.
Right. The Sunday law to the final review is the 1260, right?
Also Sonntagsgesetz bis zur finale Untersuchung ist der 1260.
Right?
Amen.
And the 1260 is a time of the Great Tribulation,
Und der 1260 ist der große Zeit der Drangsal.
which typifies 7 plagues, right?
Das schattet die 7 letzten Plagen
So
vor.
you have in a big sense 7 plagues going right along there, right?
Also in einer gewissen Maßen haben wir 7 Plagen, die hier lang gehen.
Right? Right here is Job's second test, right?
Gerade hier ist Hiobs zweite Prüfung.
And right here you have 7 plagues marked,
Hier
right?
drin haben wir auch 7 Plagen markiert.
But we want to take this down to here, right?
Wir wollen das hier runterbringen.
And Job gets smitten with boils, right?
Hiob wird mit dieser Geschwüre.
What's the first of the 7 plagues?
Das ist der erste von den 7 Plagen.
Boils,
Diese
right?
Geschwüre.
And we see that it's also 7 plagues here, right? Just prefiguring this, which was prefigured by this,
Also
right?
diese 7 Plagen hier, was hier ist, was auch das Gesamte ist.
Okay, so verse 11 in Job.
Im Hiob, Vers 11, Hiob 2, Vers 11.
Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, they came every one from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him, and to comfort him. And when they lifted up their eyes afar off, and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept. And they rent every one his mantle, and sprinkled dust upon their heads towards heaven. So you have his 3 friends.
Du hast diese 3 Freunde hier.
In Job's first test, we have a threefold enemy.
Und in Hiobs erste Prüfung hatten wir eine dreifaltige Feind.
Yes.
Yeah, the Chaldeans made out 3 bands, it says,
Also
right?
die Chaldäer, die haben 3 Banden ausgestellt.
Okay, so just in the fractal, smaller thing, you have these 3 friends which represent something internal,
Also
right?
ein Fraktal auf einer kleineren Ebene, du hast diese 3 Freunde und das markiert irgendetwas Internes.
Does it not say somewhere the Chaldeans are the magicians which are the false prophets or something?
Possibly.
Corinthians, I think it was. It's a long time ago that we have looked at it, because I remember pretty much at the beginning, when I came to school, we said that the magicians that come to Pharaoh, to Nebuchadnezzar, they are like these false prophets, and it says that we went to 2 Corinthians or 1 Corinthians. I will look at it.
Okay. It says, so when they come to Job, what do?
So, wenn sie zu Hiob kommen, was machen diese 3?
Well, they say they comfort him.
Yeah, they come and they rent their mantle, sprinkle dust upon their head. Who does that?
Also sie zerreißen ihre Kleider an und sie werfen Staub auf ihrem Kopf. Wer macht das?
Who does that right here? Mordecai, right?
Also Mordecai.
But Mordecai is doing the true, right?
Also Mordecai, er macht aber das Wahre.
What are they doing?
Was machen die hier?
A counterfeit, right?
Eine Fälschung.
You know, these wolves in sheep's clothing,
Das sind
right?
diese Wölfe in Schafskleidung.
Okay. Now, so they begin to, and what do? They accuse Job, right?
Was tun sie? Die werfen Hiob was vor.
We know that in the story of Joshua, the high priest, this is where Satan is now standing in the time period of the investigative judgment, and he's accusing God's people.
Wir
Right?
wissen, dass in der Geschichte von Josua steht hier, also Josua der hohe Priester, in der Untersuchungsgericht und Satan klagt ihm an. Josua stellt Gottes Volk dar.
Okay, so now, so they start accusing, and they go all the way up to chapter 32.
So, die klagen an und das geht an bis zur Kapitel 32 in Hiob.
It says, so these 3 men did what?
So, Hiob 32,1, diese 3 Männer machten was? Siehst du?
They ceased, right?
Also die hörten auf.
Now, in the book of Jonah, comes to a time of peace, and it says the waves that were roaring, it says they ceased.
In der Geschichte von Jonas, also die Wellen, der Sturm, es kam ein Punkt an, wo es sagt, dass die Wellen, sie hörten auch auf, also der Sturm stillte sich,
Okay,
oder
so
legte sich mal.
Jonah, who's in this test, is also been overflown by waves and a storm, right?
So, Jonas, der auch in seinem Test ist, der wird überwältigt von diesen Stürmen und diesen Wellen.
Right, and we have the second test here marked by the sea and the waves roaring, this storm, right?
Dieser zweite Test haben wir hier gesehen, es war markiert durch den Meer und den Wellen, die tobten.
So if we just go to Jude chapter 1,
Und wir gehen zu das Buch Judas, Kapitel 1,
verse 11 to 13.
die Verse 11 bis 13.
It's the last thoughts, we're just going to finish.
So letzte Gedanken für heute und dann werden wir beenden.
It says, woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. These are spots in your feasts of charity, when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are, without water, carried about of winds, trees whose fruit withereth, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots, raging waves of the sea. So what are these false prophets likened unto?
Also zu was werden diese falschen Propheten verglichen?
Raging waves of the sea. Right?
Tobende Wellen des Meeres.
So. Right? So they're likened unto raging waves, and they cease right here, just like it does in the book of Job.
So dann verglichen mit diese tobenden Wellen des Meeres und genauso wie in das Geschichte von Jonas, die hören hier auf.
So now go to Job 32 and verse 2.
So jetzt Hiob 32, Vers 2.
It says, Then was kindled the wrath of Elihu, the son of Barachel the Buzite, of the kindred of Ram, against Job was his wrath kindled, because he justified himself rather than God. Also against his three friends was his wrath kindled, because they had found no answer and yet condemned Job. So they cease, but who immediately begins?
Also die drei Freunde hören hier auf, aber wer fängt sofort an?
Elihu, right?
Elihu.
So one storm ceases, another one begins,
So
right?
der eine Sturm legt sich, aber der andere fängt an.
And his wrath is against Job, but also against this threefold union.
Aber sein Zorn ist gegen Hiob, aber auch gegen diese dreifaltige Union hier.
What happens here at the second woe?
Was geschieht hier am zweiten Wehe?
Four winds are loosed. It's the French Revolution, and the threefold union is punished,
Die
right?
4 Winde werden losgelassen, es ist die französische Revolution und die dreifaltige Union wird bestraft.
What does it say? A new manifestation of satanic power arises, right?
Es sagt, dass eine neue Manifestation satanischer Macht kommt auf.
Right? And it's coming against the north, right?
Es kommt gegen den Norden.
So you can see Satan, right? He's coming against Job, but he's also coming against this threefold union,
Also Satan, der kommt zwar gegen Hiob hier, aber auch gegen diese dreifaltige Union.
right? So that's what we're going to stop. All I want to do is this is what we put in place last week.
Also da hören wir auf. Also das haben wir schon letzte Woche alles in Platz gestellt.
Right? Because there's much more we need to add on top of this and really look at it very closely.
Aber es gibt viel mehr, was wir darauf legen müssen und sehr nah ins Betracht ziehen.
Okay, but everybody get the general theme, right?
Aber kann jeder der allgemeine Logik ergreifen?
Yes?
Yes.
Right. Okay, let us close for the
Lasst uns mit unserer Gebetsrunde abschließen.